Hi, I'm Casey Melvin, and I'm a BYU Idaho Marriage and Family Studies major. I got to sit down this week with a family therapist. Her name was Lindsay Wallace Doherty. She is a licensed practicing counselor as well as a nationally certified counselor, and she also has biofeedback certification. She leases office space from Kids Are Great Pediatrics, which is located on North Weber Street in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The office there, the number is 719-577-4200. Lindsay is in private practice. Even though she leases office space from the pediatric group, she is totally independent. She works whatever hours she'd like to or not. She works during the day and only 3 days a week. She does not do evenings or weekends. She accepts the clients that she wants to. She takes time off when she needs to. She's able to put her family and her values first. Lindsay is a Christian, and her beliefs shape who she is, and she talks about them fairly commonly. Before she was with the Kids Are Great office, she actually was with several other practicing counselors, women that were openly hostile about Lindsay's Christian beliefs. And so she eventually decided that that was not a good environment for her and she needed to make some changes and made that move. So having that flexibility of being able to up and move really was a blessing to Lindsay with her private practice. When she did make that move, she actually took about a 50% pay cut, and she chose to move from that office partly because of the hostilities there, but also because she wanted to be able to serve people who weren't getting services elsewhere. She kind of switched her clientele over so that she was serving more of those with government insurance, and that generally means that she doesn't get paid as much because those insurance companies contract for lower rates. She typically sees patients, as I mentioned, just 3 days a week. That adds up to about 25 hours of face-to-face time each week. She told me that her malpractice insurance considers that part-time, but that does not include any of the paperwork or clerical things that need to be done each week. Lindsay puts high value on that flexibility that I mentioned. It came up again and again and again through our interview. About 2 years ago, this is just one example, the Colorado Springs community was really shocked when a forest fire, topped a ridge and then raced down into town, taking about 200 homes in the process. Lindsay's was one of those neighborhoods affected, and her home was heavily damaged, even though it was able to be saved by the firefighters. When this happened, Lindsay was able to take about 6 weeks off work. She moved her family into a townhome. She has 4 kids, and they were able to stay there while the bulk of the big restorative work was done on their home. But even after that, the home was still vulnerable to flooding and mudslides. Every time it rained, they had to worry about that, and they will continue to have those concerns for years to come. But Lindsay's position in private practice and not having to worry about answering to a boss really allowed her to essentially walk away from the practice, to close her doors for that 6 weeks so that she could make sure that her family had the stability and the support that they needed to get through that. When things calmed down a little bit for them, she walked right back to those patients that were waiting for her. Stresses in private practice as a family therapist are a little bit varied. I expected the worst ones to be the stress of the actual issues and the people that Lindsay would be dealing with. And she said that in the first years of practice, that was the biggest thing. In fact, she had such a hard time leaving the heartbreak of her patients at home, or her clients at work rather, that her husband told her that she either needed to learn to deal with it or she needed to find a different line of work. She remembers and continues to hold fast to the truth that making a little difference in a lot of lives is better than making no difference for anyone at all. And that keeps her going and keeps her looking for ways that she can make that difference in her practice. She really does treat her position there as a calling where she's doing the Lord's work, helping people improve their lives. She also learned to remember that her family was her first priority and that she needed to make sure her work was a blessing to them rather than a stress. So today, Lindsay finds most of the stress in the clerical aspects of her work. There are a lot of different insurance companies and their policies about billing and payment and documentation. They're not all the same. So she has to keep up with all of those different companies and their different policies and expectations of her. She does hire a company to do her billing, but when there are issues and things that have to be resolved, it has to go through her and she has to be involved in those details. She did specifically highlight the example of the military insurance, TRICARE, being handled by TriWest, I believe it was, beforehand. before the last year, and then about a year ago it switched over to be handled by United, and United didn't seem prepared for all the work that came with that when they won the contract. So that transition, like I said, almost a year ago, has happened and should be complete and things should be running smoothly, but Lindsay still has patients that she's been treating this entire time, and she has not been paid a penny by the insurance company, even though she's done everything the way that she is being told to do. TRICARE and United aren't talking to each other very well, and so she does what TRICARE says, and then it gets kicked back, and then she does what United says, and it gets kicked back, and it's just quite the nightmare. So she hates that she has to go from one task to another.